Hi, I'm Brent, and I like to paint outside. And this is Austin. He likes to make videos outside. He's an awesome cinematographer. I'm not. My videos are okay, but his videos are next level awesome. He does fantastic work, and the link to the video he made on this day is in the description, but more about that in a bit. First, let's talk about the act of making art, and why I think art should be a verb. I drive to the mountains where Austin and I filmed a lot, and I couldn't help but notice that a lot of other people do too. These mountains are in Utah, and a lot of people enjoy them for different reasons. Cyclists who cycle, runners who run, and even climbers that climb. So if I'm an artist, does that mean I art? I know it's correct to say I make art, but for me the experience of making art is more important than the resulting piece of art. And that's why art is a verb for me, because it's an activity that I really enjoy. Here I'm setting up to do this painting on a weekend after I filmed with Austin. So it's just me this time, but the leaves are still stunning and I'm excited to get started. I've learned a lot about what type of gear and supplies I like to take when I make my art, but I'm always experimenting with new things. That's part of the fun, exploring new places with new art supplies. Today I'll be using these watercolor pencils, but first I'll use these pan pastels. And even before that, I'll sketch the scene on a piece of canvas paper with a graphite pencil and then a watercolor pen. The pan pastels are pretty good for an underpainting. I have a hard time doing details with them, but for the big blocks of color, they're pretty good. But this video isn't really about how to use pan pastels. In fact, I'm not sure it matters what medium you use when creating art. In my other videos, you'll notice that I try to use lots of different mediums. I've used pencils, markers, oil pastels, and crayons, not to mention all the different surfaces I've created on. In fact, I consider the camera a pretty good way to create too. I like photography, and I like making these videos. And that takes me back to Austin. Austin is an artist too. His camera work is beautiful, but his videos are more than that. He likes to tell stories with the videos. When he interviewed me, we talked a lot about what it means to create art and why we do it. He mentioned that he likes to go out and meet new people and hear the stories and see the places and things they enjoy. That's why we came here. We were creating art together in a beautiful place, and that's why I keep coming back, to create and connect. Some of those connections are in real life, but other connections are made through sharing online. I love watching other YouTubers, and I especially like listening to podcasts that introduce me to new artists. I've learned a lot from watching and listening to those other artists. It's a really enjoyable hobby for me, and I suspect that if you're watching this, it is for you too, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I've now moved on to the watercolor pencils, and I find they are much easier to add details with than the pastels are. You'll notice that the fence isn't actually in front of me, but when I saw it from the road, I felt like I wanted to add it, because I'll always remember this place as the spot behind the fence. I think that adding things to a painting adds to the experience and the memories. That mountain is called Mount Timpanogos, and it's an iconic fixture in this part of Utah. I'll admit that I painted it many times. Each time I learn a little bit more on how to do it. Like a runner or cyclist who does the same route many times in their training plans, I think it's a good idea to practice painting the same subjects or places more than once. I think it's good to think of making art as just practice, and each time feels like a new experience. The time of year can obviously look very different, but so can the time of day. It's truly an adventure each time I come here, and I learn something new each time, and hopefully get a little bit better each time too. If I end up painting a dud, no big deal. I'll just try a new one the next time. Painting or drawing trees is probably my favorite thing to do. I just love the abstract nature of it. The trees are simultaneously uniform but scattered. It's kind of tricky to make them all look different because it's easy to think they're all the same, and that's where I think the water is helpful. Water has a mind of its own once you start laying it down, and I like that. These trees in the foreground are not only taller looking, but they're also darker. Spacing them so they aren't too uniform also helps them feel more natural. And I try to get a little scribbly with my pencil marks to keep them wild and ungroomed. I'll go back and forth like this between pencil and water until I get the overall look I'm after. It takes a bit to work through it all, and I've sped this video up a bit, and hopefully you find it as relaxing as I do. I'm glad there are still some yellow leaves on those aspen trees. The yellow makes for a nice contrast to the blues and greens I have in the trees. I'll add a bit of orange too to punch it up a bit. I mentioned to Austin that I rarely finish a painting outdoors. I often take it home and finish it there, and this piece is no different. The view from my monitor and the reference photos I took aren't as good as outside, but I got far enough along in the outdoors that I think I captured the spirit of the place, more than just a photo would have done. To carry the practicing a sport analogy a little further, I don't think all of my art practice needs to be outdoors either. There are things that are actually easier to practice at home, with a more static reference, like a photo. The light changes a lot outside, and working from a photo is a bit easier from a seeing standpoint. But from a pencil to paper standpoint, it's pretty much the same. And learning to draw and paint inside or outside just takes time and persistence. Many artists call it putting in the mileage. Like with running, you build your endurance by running lots and lots of miles for many, many hours. In art, you build your skill level by painting lots and lots of hours too. There isn't really a shortcut. So you can see I decided to use an acrylic pan to add some of the lighter colors back in, especially for the grasses in the foreground. While the paint was still wet, I blended it away with this water brush. I went back and forth with that combination of acrylic pen and water brush until I got the look I liked. And then I decided to use blue acrylic pen for some of the shadows and the darker values. I think this really helped me strengthen the values contrast. I'm also using a watercolor marker and even more of the watercolor pencils to go back over some of those white acrylic marks and the other areas. I like the mixed media approach because it allows me to use a variety of tools to get the look I'm after. In reality, I'm just experimenting and seeing what works. Some of the things I'll learn in this painting will likely help me with future paintings. I like using lots of art supplies. I mean, I keep buying them because I can't help it. So I might as well practice using them, right? And speaking of practice, I've been making these videos for almost 3 years now, and I've uploaded almost 40 videos. That's a lot of practice. I do it all on my own, and I've learned a lot, and I still have a lot to learn. I guess I consider that video making part of my art practice too. It's a fun hobby, and I won't be declaring myself a professional videographer either. I do wonder how many people make movies and videos just as a hobby. And the answer is, yeah, I do, and in some sense, so does Austin. He has done some fantastic short documentaries, all after his 9-to-5 job. So why does he do it? Well, probably the same reason I do art. It's a passion project. Austin says he likes practicing using the equipment he buys, and he likes meeting new people and going outdoors. He also likes learning how to edit and tell stories. He wants to get really good at it, and the only way you can do that is to put in the mileage, just like in painting. We all have to create a lot of art to get good at it. So now that this painting is pretty much finished, head over to Austin's channel and watch the video he made with me. It's really good, and I feel honored to have worked with him. Thanks for exploring art with us.